Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining me today for another Twilight Zone video in my Twilight Zone ranking series where I rank every episode of the original Twilight Zone from my least favorite to my favorite. Today I'm going to be talking about number 129 on the list, One More Pallbearer, written by Rod Serling and directed by Lamont Johnson. This is a season 3 episode, and as always there will be spoilers. And I have to say, One More Pallbearer is a frustrating episode for me because I really love the concept and I like some of the themes, but I just don't think the execution of this episode totally works. So we start with a man named Paul, and he decides he's going to fake a nuclear war. He's like in a shelter setting things up, and the reason is he wants to get revenge on these 3 people that he feels wronged him throughout the earlier part of his life, even though it seems like he's done pretty well for himself. I mean, he has the means to set all this up, which I guess is kind of impressive in a strange way. So these 3 people are a teacher, a colonel, and a reverend. Now, things I like about this episode: I love the setup. Joseph Wiseman in the lead. Some may recognize him as a James Bond villain, but he's great in this episode. The directing by Lamont Johnson is also very solid. There's a lot of tension in parts of this episode and uneasiness. And although I do find Paul an unlikable character, I do find him to be a little bit interesting. So all that is great. I also really love the message in this episode, how holding on to these kind of grudges and things from the past to this extreme, is not the way to go, and it can even destroy you, as we find out at the end of the episode. Love all that. Also, the ending is actually pretty good, where Paul actually appears to go crazy after he doesn't get what he wants from these people, and when he leaves the shelter, he seems to imagine that there really was some kind of destruction to the world, even though he did all this to himself. Unfortunately, like I said, I don't think the execution of this episode totally works. So Paul is obviously unlikable and at fault. This is obviously taking a situation too far. But the problem is the 3 characters that are supposed to be the so-called victims, the teacher, the reverend, and the colonel, are also totally unlikable in my opinion. And even though I can't agree with Paul's actions, he's almost in a way proven right about these people, the way the characters are written. So I won't go through the whole episode, but for example, the teacher says she cares about her students in general. She just had a problem with Paul, but I don't believe her. Based on the way the character acts in this episode, she just comes across as a harsh person and not really caring, even though she may be. I just don't get that. Also, the Reverend comes across as very harsh, in his actions, considering his profession. Again, I just don't feel any sympathy for him. Same like with the Colonel. Like, why do I care about these people's side of it when they act the way they do? They're kind of standoffish themselves. So it makes the whole thing kind of annoying to watch because I feel like everybody's almost like a villain. And maybe that's the point of this episode. Maybe that's where the genius is that even though Paul is obviously wrong and I can't really root for him, that people all have, their own flaws, even if in this kind of situation. But, it just doesn't totally work for me because these other 3 characters just seem to act so perfect, like in their own minds. I feel like this episode was a little overwritten by Rod Serling in order to make a point. And in a way, he almost makes me want to root for Paul, but I just can't because I definitely don't agree with his actions either. So I'm set in a scenario where even though the episode's kind of well done, I just don't care that much. This is a very odd way to do a character study. So overall, I think One More Pallbearer is an interesting episode, but not a great episode. It does make me think, but it also frustrates me at the same time. So that's why it comes in at number 129. As always, feel free to leave a comment on how you feel about One More Pallbearer. Would definitely be interested to hear some thoughts on this episode. And next up will be number 128. Thanks for watching.